"We sold your apartment, Matthew," my mom announced proudly. "It's ours now," she added with a smile in front of the whole family. The next day, I watched in silence as they were taken away in handcuffs right outside my building. My name is Matthew, and I'm 30 years. I've always believed that hard work leads to success. It has to, right? Otherwise, what's the point of spending years working tirelessly, giving up rest, pushing through exhaustion, and making careful financial choices while others are out enjoying life? This belief carried me through university, through the tough years of juggling multiple jobs just to stay afloat, and finally to a point where I had something solid to show for my dedication, a place of my own. For the first time, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I wasn't stressed about making rent or nervously checking my bank balance, hoping there was enough to cover my expenses. My home stood as proof of my perseverance. It wasn't a cramped studio or a worn-down apartment in a struggling neighborhood. It was a sleek, modern place in a great part of the city, something I had worked hard for, saved every penny for, and bought entirely on my own. No loans, no outside help, just me and years of relentless effort finally paying off. But my parents saw things differently. Growing up, I was always the independent one, the kid who rarely asked for anything, never expected handouts, and solved problems on my own. My younger brother Joshua was the complete opposite. He was the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. My parents spoiled him, gave him everything he wanted without question, and always found excuses for his mistakes. It didn't matter if he failed his exams, wasted money carelessly, or made poor life decisions. There was always a reason why it wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the dependable one. If Joshua needed money, I was expected to give it. If he got himself into trouble, I was supposed to help him out. If he made bad choices, I had to be the mature sibling and clean up the mess. It was exhausting. No matter what I achieved, Joshua was always the center of attention. Eventually, I stopped trying to fight it. I understood the pattern. If Joshua wanted something, he got it, even if it cost me. If I wanted something, I had to earn it myself. That was just the way things were, and for a long time, I accepted it. I told myself that once I moved out and built my own life, this dynamic would finally end. But I was wrong. A few weeks ago, I was offered an incredible opportunity, a business trip abroad that would allow me to meet some of the most influential people in my field. It wasn't just a great chance. It was the kind of moment that could change the entire direction of my career. Naturally, I accepted. I packed my bags, got on the plane, and spent the next month working harder than ever. When I finally returned, I noticed dozens of missed calls. My mom, my dad, and even Joshua had all tried to reach me over and over again. Before I could even process it, my phone rang once more. It was my mom. Something felt off. They had never been this desperate to reach me before. I hesitated for a moment before answering the call. "Matthew," my mother greeted me, her voice unusually cheerful, almost forced. "You're back." I frowned slightly. "Yeah, I just landed." "What's going on?" "Oh, nothing," she replied, her words coming out far too quickly. "We just wanted to check in. How was your trip?" "It was fine," I answered cautiously, still trying to understand why she sounded like she was suppressing laughter. "Why did you call so many times?" There was a pause, just long enough for a wave of unease to settle over me. "Well," she finally said, dragging the word out, "we have some fantastic news." I stayed silent, though deep down I already knew I wasn't going to like what she was about to say. "We sold your apartment," she finally announced, her voice bubbling with excitement. For a second, I thought I had misheard her. "You did what?" I asked, my tone flat and emotionless. "We sold it," she repeated, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. It was such a hassle anyway, always worrying about maintenance, taxes, such a burden. "But don't worry, we got an amazing deal." I tightened my grip on the phone, trying to process what I'd just heard. "You had no right," I said slowly, making sure each word was clear and controlled, even though I could feel the anger rising inside me. "Oh, come on, Matthew," she replied dismissively, as if I were being dramatic. "Joshua needed a car. You know how hard it's been for him without one. He has responsibilities, places he needs to go. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. You sold my apartment, just so Joshua could get a car, I asked, barely believing the words as I said them. Not just any car, my mother corrected, almost proudly, a luxury sports car. He deserves something special. I was too stunned to speak. She took my silence as permission to continue. You should have seen his reaction, she gushed. He was so happy. He even said, "Wow, I can't believe Matthew finally did something useful." A dry, humorless chuckle escaped me. "You've got to be kidding." She laughed too, but there was no joke. "Isn't that sweet?" I closed my eyes and took a deep breath to stop myself from saying something I'd regret. "You do understand," I said calmly, "that you never had the legal right to sell my apartment." Silent, just for a moment, but it was enough for me to know I'd finally shaken her confidence. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice sharper now. Though she couldn't see me, I allowed myself a small bitter smile. "I mean," I said, my voice steady, "that the apartment was never yours to sell." Her fake cheerfulness disappeared entirely. "Matthew," she said, the nervousness creeping into her tone. "What do you mean?" I glanced at my watch. "You'll find out soon enough." And with that, I ended the call. For a long moment, I just sat there, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to shout, to smash something, to demand an explanation that would make this madness seem logical, but I already knew there wasn't one. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional. While I was overseas, they had taken advantage of the fact that I was thousands of miles away. Without a second thought, they sold my home, as if it were some worthless item they no longer wanted. And all for what? A car for Josh. Running a hand through my hair, I took a slow, steady breath. This wasn't just entitlement. This was outright theft. And the worst part, they genuinely believed I would accept it, simply shrug it off, and move on. But not this time. I scrolled through my contact list, and dialed my real estate agent. After 2 rings, she picked up. "Matthew, I was just about to reach out to you," she said, slightly out of breath. I frowned. "Why?" There was a brief pause. "You haven't checked your emails, have you?" Pulling the phone away from my ear, I opened my inbox. My heart sank. Over a dozen messages from the agency, some automated, others directly from her, all flagged as urgent. "I've been out of the country," I said carefully. "What's going on?" "Your parents came in last week," she began. "They brought a buyer. They claimed you had given them full legal authority to sell the property." I felt every muscle in my body tense. "They did what?" "They insisted you'd signed over your rights before leaving," she continued, her tone cautious. "At first the documents looked legitimate, but when I tried to verify them, the signatures didn't match your previous records. That's when I started digging deeper." A cold, steady calm settled over me. "And what did you find?" She hesitated for a moment. "Matthew, they forged your signature." I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath. "I wanted to contact you sooner," she added quickly, "but they claimed you were in a remote area without cell service. I had my doubts, so I delayed finalizing the sale until I could confirm directly with you." But the buyer grew impatient. "Your parents kept assuring him everything was completely legitimate." I swallowed hard. "Did the sale go through?" "No," she answered firmly. I stalled as long as I could, but they were starting to pressure me. "I was going to report it tomorrow if I still couldn't reach you." I exhaled, the tightness in my chest easing slightly. They had failed. They probably thought they'd pulled it off. And right now, I could picture them celebrating, convinced they'd gotten away with it, but they had no idea what was about to happen. I glanced at my watch. It was late, but that didn't matter. "Can you meet me at your office in an hour?" I asked. "Absolutely," she replied without hesitation. Ending the call, I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. They had forged my signature, deceived a buyer, and nearly committed fraud under my name, but their entire plan had already fallen apart. A slow, sharp smile spread across my face. This was far from over. It was about to get very interesting. When I returned to town, I had already crafted a plan. There would be no arguments, no raised voices. I wasn't going to confront them directly. I would simply let them expose themselves. The following morning, I met with my real estate agent. She had already gathered every forged document, along with detailed notes about how my parents had pressured both her and the potential buyer. The evidence was undeniable. "They're panicking," she said, sliding a folder across the desk. The buyer grew suspicious, but your parents kept reassuring him that everything was fine. They even went as far as claiming you were mentally unfit to manage your own finances. That's why they took over the sale. I let out a dry laugh and shook my head. Unbelievable. Lowering her voice, she added, I also spoke with a lawyer. What they did wasn't just dishonest. It was illegal. If the sale had gone through, they could have been charged with fraud and identity theft. My smirk didn't fade. They still might. My next stop was the police station. I wasn't sure how this would all play out, but I wasn't going to let them walk away from this without consequences. Sitting across from an officer, I laid out the entire story and handed over the evidence. The officer flipped through the documents, frowning. This is serious. Falsifying signatures on legal paperwork, especially to sell property, that's a felony. I figured as much, I replied calmly. He nodded. We'll need to bring them in for questioning. That was exactly what I wanted. I didn't warn my parents. I didn't call, text, or say a word. I simply waited. It didn't take long. That evening, my phone rang. The moment I answered, my mother's voice, frantic and shrill, erupted through the speaker. Matthew, what have you done? I couldn't help but smile. What do you mean? The police came to the house. They accused us of fraud. This is absurd. We're your parents. How could you do this to us? I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm and even. I didn't do anything, Mom. You did this to yourselves. Her voice cracked with anger. We raised. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. Do you even understand how much trouble we're in? Oh, I understand, I answered smoothly. You forged my signature, misled a real estate agency, and nearly scammed a buyer. That isn't just trouble, Mom. That's a criminal offense. She exhaled sharply, her defiance slipping away. It was for Joshua, Matthew. He needed that car. You have everything. And I earned everything I own, I interrupted coldly. And you tried to steal it from. There was a long silence. Then, much softer, she asked, what's going to happen to us? I let the question hang in the air for a moment. I guess you'll find out, I said before ending the call. The weeks that followed were pure chaos. My parents were officially charged with attempted fraud and forgery. They avoided jail time, but were hit with steep fines and crushing legal fees. The buyer, furious over the deception, was even considering suing them for wasting his time. As for Joshua, he was furious. You ruined everything, he snapped when we finally spoke. Mom and Dad were just trying to help me, and now they're in trouble because of you. I stared at him, speechless. Are you seriously blaming me? Yes, he shouted. You could have just let it go. It's not like you don't have the money. You could have bought another place. I actually laughed. That's not the issue, Joshua. They tried to steal from me. They forged my signature. And you're mad at me? You're selfish. He spat. You always have been. I shook my head and let out a quiet sigh. No, Joshua. I just don't let people take advantage of me. In the end, their scheme cost them far more than they ever imagined. Their reputation crumbled. Friends and extended family found out the truth. And just like that, the so-called golden child wasn't so special anymore. As for me, the apartment remained mine. And for the first time, I saw clearly just how little my family had truly valued me. But the strange thing was, I wasn't angry anymore. I was free, and that more than anything they could have stolen was priceless. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that my parents, embarrassed and legally punished, finally understood the consequences of their action. That Joshua, the so-called brother of mine, took a moment to reflect on just how absurd his entitlement had become. But unsurprisingly, that wasn't the case. Instead, they doubled down. Their behavior only escalated. It started with emotional manipulation. My mother began calling at odd hours, her voice thick with fake distress. Matthew, I just don't understand how you could do this to us, she whimpered one night. Your father can't even go to work without feeling ashamed. Everyone's talking about. Maybe you should have thought about that before committing fraud, I replied flatly. She gasped, sharp and dramatic as if I'd just struck her. You're completely heartless. We are your family. Families are supposed to forgive. Oh, you mean the way you forgave me when you sold my home behind my back, I countered. There was silence, a long pause, and then in a soft, choked whisper she muttered, one day you'll regret this. And with that she hung up. But that was only the beginning. Next came the excuse. Joshua, clearly feeling emboldened by the fact that he hadn't faced any real consequences for his part in all of this, decided his best defense was to rewrite history. "You blew everything out of proportion," he scoffed when I unexpectedly ran into him at a family gathering I never wanted to attend in the first place. Yes, Mom and Dad made a serious mistake, but did they really deserve everything that happened to them? I silently stared at Joshua, unable to believe my ears. "They committed fraud," I reminded him. "Yeah, but it was for me," he replied, as if that somehow justified everything. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "And you don't see anything wrong with that?" He just rolled his eyes. "You have plenty of money. You weren't even living there most of the time. Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" And there it was, the root of the problem. Joshua genuinely didn't see anything wrong with our parents' actions, because in his mind, everything I had was also his. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I accomplished, he believed he was entitled to everything simply because we shared the same blood. That's when I finally understood something. This wouldn't stop unless I made sure it did. The final straw came a few weeks later. I was finally home, enjoying the peace that came from cutting them out of my life, when an unknown number popped up on my phone. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello?" A voice I instantly recognized slithered through the line. "Mr. Bryan." I frowned. "Who is this?" A quiet chuckle responded. "I believe we've spoken before. I was the interested buyer for your previous property." My body tensed. This man, the very person my parents had almost sold my home to, had no reason to contact me. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone now ice cold. "Well, I must say, I was quite disappointed with how everything turned out," he replied smoothly. "I was promised an excellent deal, a prime property, all neatly wrapped up, but unfortunately you interfered." My grip on the phone tightened. "Get to the point," I snapped. He sighed. "It seems your dear mother and father are still quite desperate. They reached out to me again asking if I'd still be interested in purchasing the property from you, this time at an even lower price. A discreet arrangement, so to speak." My stomach twisted. They were still trying to sell my apartment. For a moment, I couldn't find my voice. Then slowly, I forced myself to speak. "And how did you respond?" Another low chuckle. "I told them I'd consider it, but you see, Mr. Bryan, I don't tolerate being deceived. The first time, they claimed they had full control over the sale, and now they're pretending they can negotiate on your behalf, even though I already know they can't. It's also completely unprofessional." I was furious. They had learned nothing. They felt no remorse. They were simply searching for another way to manipulate the situation in their favor. The man on the phone continued, his voice sharp. "I have one simple question. Were you aware of this little scheme?" I exhaled steadily, trying to keep my rage in check. "I am now," I replied. He answered, "Good, because I think it's time someone teaches your family a lesson." I leaned in slightly. "What exactly are you suggesting?" He let out a quiet, menacing laugh. "Oh, I think this will be something you'll appreciate." At that moment, I understood that this situation was far from settled. As the call disconnected, I stood still in my living room, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and determination. I had always considered myself the calm one, the person who handled both business and personal matters with a level-headed approach, but what my parents had done, and what they were still trying to do, had pushed me beyond any limit I could tolerate. They no longer saw me as an individual, but as an obstacle to get around, a tool to exploit for their own interests. I was done letting them get away with it. Without wasting time, I took immediate action. The first step was contacting my attorney to ensure everything was legally solid. While I had already reported the situation to law enforcement, I knew that if I didn't act fast, my parents might find a way to avoid facing the consequences. The buyer's call had been the turning point. It was now time to fight back. Next, I reached out to the real estate agency that had initially handled the fraudulent sale attempt. I explained the entire situation in detail. The agent who had been involved was stunned by what she heard. After listening to my account, she immediately agreed to provide testimony against my parents. Her statement would serve as concrete proof that the entire scheme had been carefully orchestrated. But even that wasn't enough. I needed to take things one step further to ensure my parents couldn't manipulate their way out of this mess. I turned to the press. This was no longer just a personal conflict.
My parents had blatantly engaged in fraud by attempting to sell a property that didn't belong to them. At this stage, it wasn't just about money. It was about justice. I refused to let them escape the consequences. The media response was swift. Within days, their names were splashed across news headlines, their deception exposed for everyone to see. My mother scrambled to do damage control, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, and insisting that she had only done it out of love for Joshua. But by then it was too late. Their downfall had already begun. With law enforcement now fully involved, the buyer, after being contacted by both my attorney and the authorities, chose to press charges. My parents were arrested, but the real shock came when my mother was officially convicted of forging my signature. She had gone to extreme lengths in her attempt to manipulate me, and now not only was she facing legal repercussions, but she was also watching as the public image she had carefully built crumbled around her. Joshua, of course, was livid when I arrived at the courthouse for one of the hearings. I spotted him standing with our parents in the middle of a crowd of reporters. He fixed me with a glare full of hatred. "This is all because of you," he spat. "You ruined everything. You could have just let it go." I shook my head, unsurprised by his delusional sense of entitlement. "Let it go? Forgive them for trying to steal from me, for treating me like a disposable piece in their scheme?" I responded. "No, Joshua. This was inevitable." His expression darkened, his fists clenched. "You'll regret this. You always push people away. One day, you'll wish you still had family." I didn't say anything. There was no need to. I had already let go. Over the following months, legal battles unfolded, forcing my parents to face the consequences of their actions: hefty fines, probation, and the irreversible stain of a criminal record. I refused to waver, even though every step of the process was difficult to swallow. This was never just about the apartment or financial loss. It was about their complete disregard for me as a person. They were convinced I would stay silent, that I would submit simply because I was their son. But they had severely misjudged me. The most infuriating part came when my mother attempted to rewrite the situation. Once the court proceedings concluded, she reached out one final time. Her voice was thick with desperation. "Matthew, we understand now. We've learned from this. Can't we just move forward? We're family. Don't you want to put this all behind us?" I allowed the silence to stretch before finally responding. "No, Mom," I said in a calm, firm tone. "We're not getting a fresh start. Not this time." Then I ended the call. That was the last time I ever spoke to them. They never took responsibility, never admitted they were wrong, but they did learn an unforgettable lesson about the price of betrayal. And so did I. Reflecting on everything, I have no regrets about standing my ground. I don't feel remorse. The years I spent trapped under their control, burdened by their expectations, were gone. I was never their pawn, never their so-called golden child. I was my own person, and I would never again allow them to dictate my life. So what do you think, Reddit? Did I take things too far? Should I have let it go and moved on? Or was this the only way to ensure they faced the consequences of their actions? I'd love to hear your thoughts.